this form, even though it is this tiny little box up here, the proposal description, project description, and environmental screening form, the Pdesf, this form takes substantial amount of time to fill out. And let's see, that's the park identifier. Make sure that this form, that you take a lot of time to actually fill it out. Let me try it again and see if it actually opens. I'll give you the example of it. Okay, this is the project description and environmental screening form. We have purposely given you an example of how to fill this out. It's quite laborious to fill it out, to be completely honest. It's like it requires a lot of time and a lot of information to put it together. That's why we've given you an example. This example comes from the National Park Service. So please, as you're filling it out, use it as reference, not to copy and paste information, but to see what it is that we're looking for. And again, everything that you're filling out here needs to line up with the rest of the project information that you're coming to. There's one particular section I want to talk about, the Pdesf. There is an environmental screening form that you have to fill out as part of your project. Obviously, you have to do all of this. But the really core and useful thing of doing the applications the way that we have done them is that because you are, one, just acquiring property or renovating the existing park that you have out there, when you get ready to do your project environmental screening you'll be screaming when you're doing it, screening form, is that because you're renovating or acquiring new property, there is an exceptionally low probability, I would be surprised if any of them come in, that require that any of these environmental issues over here exceed minimum impacts, all right, or exceed minor impacts. So I would be very, very, very surprised if either one of these two boxes over here checked for any of your elements. It's not to say that it won't happen, it's just a very low probability. And what that means is that when these come in, and you're expected to fill these out with local knowledgeable officials and outside resources, but if nothing exceeds the minor impact, it means that you do not have to do an environmental impact study or a full environmental assessment. These environmental assessments and impact studies are time-consuming and can cost tens of thousands of dollars to do. So by addressing these needs in your park system, the renovations and the acquisitions, you will likely not have to do those. You're still going to have to fill out this form, but every project that comes in there will be a high probability that it is what's called a categorical exclusion. So it excludes you from having to do further environmental replacement or environmental assessments. Do not just go through and check all these boxes as minor or lower just to avoid this. We really need to know your information, and you're going to be bound to it. A lot of the information that you're going to need to put into this project description environmental screening form is going to be drawn out through the other forms that we ask you to fill out. So this might be one of the better forms to fill out as you're going through, to just make sure it all mirrors. There's going to be some duplication of information that you have to fill out, but it is a necessary form. Please do not overlook it. If you do, then we have to kick it out, or it won't be accepted for contracting within the National Park Service. I'm going to go over this real quick, and then we'll pause for a couple seconds, and I'll answer some questions. Unlike Pdesf, you have to get State Historical Office to review your projects. These can take, don't expect that you have to submit information off to the State Historic Preservation Office, and they're not going to respond back to you within a day, I wouldn't think. They do take several weeks, sometimes longer to submit. If you wait until 2 weeks before your application deadline to submit this off to the to the State Historic Preservation Office, I would not expect to be able to submit your application. Please do this well in advance if you know what you're going to do. The good thing also about the applications being acquisition or renovating existing parks is that, again, similar to the Pdesf, there is a really, really high probability that the State Historic Preservation Office is going to kick back and say that your project is not likely to impact any historic elements on site because you're renovating things that are already there. We do need this for a project to move forward within contracting, but it is highly improbable that you're going to get a flag kicked back by the Historic Preservation Office that prohibits your project from moving forward. Project timeline. This is something that we request, and it's something that the National Park Service looks to. The timeline is looked at, and the National Park Service has said explicitly that when they are looking at whether or not a project will be approved for an extension, if that circumstance comes up, that they will look back at this timeline that you've submitted as part of your grant application and use it as reference as to whether or not they should approve an extension. So that's all to say, don't take this timeline as just something that you're going to slap together. Please be accurate with it and stick to it as best you can. If you start to deviate from it, if you've said that you're going to plan and bid and have 90% completion within 2 years, and then we get to year 2 and you haven't started yet, that's not going to be a very good argument that I'm going to have a very difficult time presenting that to the National Park Service for an extension request if you've deviated that far from your project timeline. So pay mind to your timeline. It does come into play, and do as best you can to make sure that you're adhering to it if you get funded. Keep it simple. We've given you an example. This is kind of covering over it right now, but just basically take your project narrative to where you say each element that you're going to do and tell us where along this timeline you're going to do it. If you have planning and you're going to build a playground and a ball field, then say planning is in progress now. We're going to have the ball field done by year 1. We're going to have the playground done by year 2. Do that. And that way, each element is listed in what year you're planning on doing it. You can give us additional notes if you know.